Hey, you guys, welcome to the Next Level Confident podcast. My name is Janelle Ane, and our guest today is Matt Shakir. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. How are you, Janelle?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you. You guys, Matt is the founder and CEO of Awaken Momentum, which is an international life and business coaching company that focuses on all layers of transformation. He also founded Awaken Masculine, which is a men's group based out of Denver, Colorado, and he is a speaker and facilitator for workshops and live events. Let's go. You guys can go to his website at awakenmomentum.com, or you can follow him on IG at Matthew, Matthew, Shakir, Shakir. It's like Shakira, but just Shakir.
That's it.
Woo! Okay, I did the intro. How are you feeling, Matt? How are you feeling?
I feel amazing. How are you?
I am feeling good. I'm in my new place in San Diego and getting moved in and just feeling ready to conquer this podcast.
I love it. How's the beautiful California weather right now?
Oh, perfection. It really is. Frankie is loving it. For those of you who have been following this podcast for a while, Frankie and I moved to Denver back when I lived in San Diego because he wasn't ready to move to San Diego. And then he became ready. And then we moved way quicker than I thought because I thought we were going to be in Denver for at least a year or two, but we were only there for 9 total months. And then he was like, let's move to San Diego. He got a new job and we up and moved here very quickly, like 4 weeks after we kind of found out that he had the job. So pretty sweet.
Awesome.
Okay,
Very cool.
So today we're going to talk about one of Matt's favorite topics, which is grit. You don't hear that word very often, grit, and being relentlessly in pursuit of one's dreams. So I did a little homework and found that the definition of grit is courage and resolve, strength of character. And used in a sentence, he displayed the true grit of a Navy pilot. And I think to be able to talk about grit, it only makes sense to talk about challenges first. Matt, you had mentioned a while back that you've been through numerous job losses and breakups and financial ups and downs. Will you tell us a little bit about the lowest low you've experienced?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of lows, but I will tell you that I'm going to get really, really vulnerable here, just because this story has been the biggest impact and biggest foundation for transformation. End of 2018, I got out of a relationship and it was pretty tumultuous, and made the wrong move, and found myself inside of a jail cell for an evening. And it was the hardest moment of my life. I sat inside of this jail cell with no idea when I was to get out, and I spent 27 hours in there. And I just remember like crying in like this stainless steel mirror and be like, how did I get here? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't hurt anybody physically. I didn't, like do anything that I can conceptualize as something that would put me inside of a jail cell. And, looking back now, that moment was probably the most pivotal moment of my life, because I said, right here, right now, I am changing everything. I am stopping anything that's not allowing me to really flourish in my life and in business and in relationships. And I started to do like this deep dive in this audit, in the cell. And I was like, what got me here? Oh, so there's been relationship pickups. Oh, since, there's been substance abuse. Oh, there's been, just not living a life that truly aligns with who I want to become. And I promised myself, I said, when I get out of here and I have to go through this court thing and I'll get the right attorneys, I said, I am changing everything. And that moment was just so raw and real, because I just remember like just the tears were pouring down my eyes, and I felt like such a victim. But I realized, no, this will be the number one thing that will catalyze all of the expansion and growth and healing in my life that got me to this position, and, I just recognized like the job losses, the breakups, all that stuff didn't matter to the moment of, you have no control of your freedom, zero control. And you're in this cage and you're like, okay, this can't ever happen again. Didn't know this was on my bucket list, you know? I was like, this must have been the back page of my bucket list. Spend a night in jail, you know, get arrested as an adult, right? And, you know, it was just one of those things. I look back now, that was such a prime time for me to look at, okay, where do I want to go? I've envisioned building an empire. I've envisioned impacting thousands of lives across the globe. I've envisioned starting my own company. And I realized I wasn't all in on it. I wasn't all in. I was attracting the wrong women in my life. I was playing small in a lot of areas. I was afraid. I was truly in fear of probably both failure and success. And I recognized in that moment, through those, you know, that emotional release, this catalytic experience, that this was my new bottom. There was no way I was reverting or going back to anything that got me into this position. And from that moment, everything just blew up. Everything expanded. You know, I went through this court case, which was really hard and challenging, but I realized through that experience, I was awakened to a higher level of consciousness and a higher vibration that I had activated, because I said, you know, from this moment on, I'm gonna pause drinking, I'm gonna pause dating, and I'm gonna truly put all of my efforts, all of my experience and my wisdom and the desire, the true passion towards what I want to create in my business. And from everything, you know, from there, it was last August on, everything has just exploded. And it's like I am realizing now, just there is infinite possibilities when you create a new bottom. And that's like the biggest thing. That's for me what I extrapolate from understanding grit is, no matter what, you can make a new bottom. You can say, this is it. It doesn't have to mean that you spend a night in jail or you get arrested, but like you can create anything as your new foundation, as I will never go lower than this, and what's possible when I begin to expand from that place.
Wow, I love that. And it's so funny you say that, because I remember when I was thinking about starting my business and all these, you know, big ideas and dreaming bigger for my life. And I remember hearing people who had these crazy stories of hitting rock bottom. And I remember being at a seminar where a woman had, you know, husband had beat her or something like that, something so horrible, and her child had to live out of her car for numerous months. And then she decided to launch her business and ended up becoming very successful in it. And I remember sitting there at that seminar and thinking, that's never going to happen to me. Like, I'm never going to hit a rock bottom like that. Instead, I'm just going to keep scraping by with mediocre. And that in and of itself was like, oh my gosh. Because I kept wishing, I almost wished that something horrible would happen to me so that I could propel forward, but nothing horrible was happening. Like, I was doing well at my job, and I was doing well in all these areas of my life, you know, that my dating life, and it was all good, instead of hitting that rock bottom. And so the comment you said about you get to create your own rock bottom or your own bottom, it was like in that moment that I said, okay, I'm not gonna probably hit the rock bottom that I think I might. So I might as well make the choice to propel myself so that I don't stay with my mediocre self for forever.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's something that I talk to my really close best friends about is, you know, a lot of people will live life and it will be mediocre. It'll be average. And it's one of the reasons why I became a coach, because I looked around, you know, in my former career, I was in medical sales, and it was like I was making all of this money. I mean, you know, I came from a family that struggled financially, and, you know, fast forward in my mid 20s, you know, I was in one of the top medical sales positions in the world, making, you know, more money per month than most people make a year, like literally. And I was unhappy. And, you know, I started to look around me and I'm like, wow, all of these people have these jobs where they're making anywhere from like 300 grand to $1 million a year, but yet I see no vibrancy. I see no passion for what they're doing, because they're on autopilot, because they don't think there's anything better. And I realized that, you know, make room, not for good, not even for great. Create a life that is based on outstanding. You know, create a life that like just enlivens you. And if you're not in love with your relationship or the company you work for or where you live or what you drive, whatever it is, or just yourself internally from the inside out, you have the opportunity to change it. But, I look around and I see so many people just living good, but there's so much more. We have this very unique, once in a lifetime human experience. I don't want to settle for good. I don't even want to settle for great. Like, I want to live a platinum lifestyle, a lifestyle that just wakes me up in the morning at 4 a.m. naturally, and I am like, let's freaking go.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think the thing that is the most important to reiterate is that it's going to look different for everyone. So for someone, it could be, I always say, it's like, it could be staying a stay-at-home mom. If that is your dream career, amazing. You should do that. For some people, it's in the corporate world, not everyone is supposed to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's supposed to start their own business. It's more just, you got to get deep inside yourself and say, what do I really, really want? And don't base it on the money. Don't base it on perception of what you think you should do because your family did it that way or because your best friends do it that way. Just do whatever it is that makes you happy, period.
Absolutely. And I think it's, it's very hard for people, especially nowadays, because we live in this digital age where, we have Instagram and Facebook, and naturally it's a human innate, thing to compare ourselves to other people, compare ourselves to other coaches, to other women, to, social media influencers and all of these things. And I think, I love what you said about going deep. Like, if you can truly erase the external outside forces and societal impressions, or what your parents or family or friends have all experienced, and truly look inside from a soul deep level and ask yourself, if anything was possible, what would I want to do with my life? Like, that's such a profound question. And if you can answer that truthfully and authentically, and then you go after that, you will live a life that is truly just beautiful and expansive and fulfilling. And like you said, I love what you said. It doesn't matter if you're mowing lawns, or if you're, raising a family, or if you just want to be a hippie and hike around in the woods and, like hike the Pacific Crest Trail, whatever it is, that's beautiful. But lean all the way into that and do it to the best possible ability that only you know what that looks like.
Yeah. Come on. Let's go. Okay, so how does grit play into your story, and what are the steps that you took to heal when you're, I guess I said, like, when hard stuff happens, but specifically this story of you going to, I always confuse jail and prison. Jail? Prison. Jail.
Yeah, jail.
Jail for the night.
It was prison.
This podcast is coming to you from the Denver prison. Just joking. So jail for the night. What were the steps that you took to heal from that?
Yeah, well, I feel like my whole life has been like this perfect exemplification of grit, because I looked at my parents when I was at a young age, and I was like, man, like, my mom wants to save the world as a social worker, and my dad is a truck driver, and he's just never going to change what he does. Never even graduated high school. And I said, from a very young age, I knew there was this fiery passion inside me. I knew it from a very, very early age, because I was able to really authentically connect with others in a way that I never saw anybody around me do. And that parlayed to, like, when I got out of that jail cell that day, and I was like, okay, I am going to take the steps. And a lot of these steps were already in play, but I said, okay, who do I need on what I call my dream team? Like, who do I need on my dream team to get me not only just out of this situation, but to propel me into the place that I've envisioned my life going? And, from there, I hired a coach that I've been working with for the better part of 2 years, and committed to working with her full time for all of 2020. I found one of the most amazing therapists in Boulder, Colorado, that has completely shifted my life in ways, and started to get rid of all of that stuff, that stuff from childhood that I didn't even know was there, that was preventing me from showing up in relationships with others, with women, but more importantly, preventing me from understanding the self-love and self-care that I needed to fill my own cup, and then, just realizing, again, moving forward with friendships, I said, I am only going to spend time with people that empower me and enliven me. And I started putting myself around people like your husband, Frankie, that I look at and I say, wow, like that person is amazing. And they, in some way, in some shape of their life, are far ahead of where I am. So I started putting myself around people that I looked up to, no matter what it was, whether they were in better physical shape or they were more successful as an entrepreneur, or they, had a stronger mindset. And I started to realize that all of my friendships were just all these amazing, like, high level people that understood who I was and what I brought value to them with, but also more importantly, they were just sharing their world with me. And I started to realize that all of the people that, I surrounded myself with that got me to a place of very low vibration and just, not making the right decisions that to align with who I was becoming, they just fell off, and I think it's so important, like that famous saying we've all heard, you are the mean of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Well, that's 1000% true. And I experienced that, and I started to see, like, as I put myself around more amazing, more successful people, my life just began to continue to ascend and accelerate, and in doing that, I felt so much better going through a really hard experience. Going through a court case is the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And, even though there was no like big charges or anything like that, and I had one of the best attorneys in Colorado, it was really, really hard. I mean, I just remember, my own self-care practices like were fully amplified. Like I wasn't coaching anybody. I was like, I'm putting everything on pause. Fortunately, I had money saved from, my career in medical sales. So every day, I kid you not, Janelle, I was journaling 6-7 times a day. I was crying. I was doing emotional releases. I was doing inner child work. I was getting out in nature and taking a lot of walks. And I started eating cleaner, and I removed alcohol and everything from my life, and just started to realize, like, if I want to treat my life to the value that I know that I have the capacity to, everything has to shift. And it only means, even if it means just 1% better, everything had to shift. I mean, there was a point too that I cut out coffee and sugar, and I was eating less meat. Like, I really did like a full audit, like the CPA of my own life. And I said, okay, if you value your body and your mindset and your human experience like a temple, what needs to change? And I started to just change things one by one.
Yeah. And as you changed yourself, like you said, the people who were the ones who were bringing you into the substance abuse and drinking and partying and all that kind of stuff, they just started to fall away because you changed who you were. So it's interesting how when that happens, it's not even really a choice necessarily. Like, sometimes it is, but sometimes it just naturally happens. People kind of slowly, it's not that you hate them or that you'll never speak to them again, or, you had some big conversation of like, hey, I'm never talking to you again. It's just those friendships start to kind of just fade in the background because when you do try to hang out, it doesn't work. You're like, we're trying to hang out, but like, you're talking about your partying. I'm talking about like, going and mountain biking and being in nature and eating clean food. And we don't even have very much in common anymore. And it just fades.
Yeah, there's a beautiful book by Frederick Dodson called Levels of Energy. And the book it's really, really challenging to read. I've probably read like 80-90 pages. But in the beginning, there's a spectrum of energy. Like, we are all energetic beings. And whether you're operating at a 90, which is like basically like a homeless person that talks to themselves and is experiencing just like very, very low levels of the human experience, or 1000, where you're fully reached enlightenment. Like, a lot of humans that have what they want out of life operate from like a place of love and compassion and opportunity, which is around 400 to 500. And I started realizing, as I was elevating my vibration, the people that lived at 200 or 300 that complained all day and didn't love what they were doing and, used substances to cope and all of these things, I realized that levels of energy cannot meet. So like you said, like it feels just so misaligned when I was spending time with people that, were still partying and going out to the bars all night, not negating those experiences. There's nothing wrong with them. I've done them for so long, but I realized that wasn't aligning with who I was becoming. And I think the biggest thing that I've started to realize is through my awareness and through the deep inner work that I do, you have to align who you're becoming with who you are in the present moment. And if you can start to really live your life as if who you're becoming in the real time present moment, everything starts to shift. Everything begins to ascend. And it's such a great way for us to realize what we want right now in the future. Like we can really pull that in to our present, move up our timeline. But you have to be aware and conscious of how you're showing up for your life and whether you're in alignment to who you're becoming and what you really, really want to achieve of your life.
Yeah. Okay, 2 quick questions, and then we're getting back to the grit stuff. Okay, one is, what would you say to someone who is listening right now and they're maybe starting to check out because they're not super into the like energy stuff because it sounds woo-woo? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, doing an audit of your life and really just, you don't have to be spiritual to do this. Like really just check in with yourself. Check in with what your life looks like. Are you happy with yourself? First and foremost, because self-care and self-love is the most important thing. Do you believe in yourself? And what do you want to go towards? What are your true desires? If you take everything external off the plate, what are your true desires of your relationship, of your life, of, your hobbies and passions, of your business or the company you work for, your career, so forth. And just recognize where are you and rate them from 1 to 10 and start to look at, where do you want to focus your time? Where do you want to focus your energy? Because where focus goes, energy flows. So if you want to change your career, then start to take 1 to 2 simple steps forward in the areas that you feel like are scoring lower than maybe a 6 or a 7, and put your time there, and trust that what you put your time in, be patient, have the grit, and understand that obstacles are going to come. Sometimes you can look at those, as, okay, is this meant for me? But also like, sometimes you got to push through. And I think that's the most important thing, whether it's woo-woo or spiritual or not, like, doing a full audit of what your life looks like and seeing where do you want to elevate? Where do you want to improve? And starting to create, ways to execute on improving your life is going to generate a stronger belief in self, and it's going to make you love your life a lot more.
Yeah. That's a great piece of homework for anyone listening right now. Truly sit down and do that audit. Like this isn't just like do an audit of your life. It's like, no, this is a homework assignment that I literally give clients of mine. Make a list of all the areas of your life, whether that be, health and fitness, relationships, spirituality, work, whatever, all these different areas of our life, and then rate them from 1 to 10. 1 is like, it's really crappy. 10 is, it's amazing. It's perfect. It can't get any better. And truly do this as a piece of homework after listening. Even if you're, you have 5 minutes, it doesn't take that long. Just sit down and do it for just a second. You can even pause this podcast right now and do it. I'm like such a big believer in taking action, not just talking about it or listening to it, but like truly do the audit on yourself, because just listening to inspirational podcasts like these doesn't do it. You got to take the time after to do the reflection on yourself to actually see change in your life.
Yeah. And that's such a great point. And if you think about how much time is wasted watching Netflix or, sitting in front of a computer or like playing on Instagram or social media, if we just spent even a snapshot, even 10% of that time really diving into what we want to create of our lives, like our lives will exponentially be better in every area. Because once you start changing one part of your life, it starts to trickle off and permeate to the other areas of life. So think about that, how much time and energy we spend on doing our taxes with a CPA at the end of each year. You should be doing that experience at least once a year, if not quarterly, for what your life is, if you really, really, truly want to get to where you want to go.
So good. Okay, my next question is, and you don't have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but I feel like I need a little more understanding of like why you went to jail that night. Can you give us just like a little bit more? Because it feels so vague. I don't know what you did. I feel like, am I talking to a villain or am I not?
No, you're not Not gonna be a villain. I kicked the hornet's nest of a woman that was very angry, and I was unfaithful, and I shared that with her. Because it was in integrity for me to say that, and it wasn't something I was proud of. It was something that happened by putting myself in the wrong environment that wasn't conducive to the health of the relationship. And I went to pick up my stuff, and I saw that some of my stuff wasn't there, and so I grabbed a phone and was like, let me confirm how I felt, that she was talking to other people behind my back, and sure enough, she was. And next thing you know, I was being charged with a few different charges. Again, nothing like no felonies, anything. The lowest
Yeah.
level of charges you can get, like breach of peace and like, you know, destruction of property. But taking that cell phone was what I needed to do, or I guess what my ego needed to do to confirm how I felt, that I was in the wrong relationship. Not negating, that I shouldn't have took something that wasn't my own. But yeah, it was one of those things that, I looked at it, and, even talking to the attorney and friends, they're like, you took a phone and you spent 2 nights in jail and you had a year of probation and all of these things. And I was like, you know what? Unfortunately, yes. But I said, I can look at it now, and I'm so gracious for her, and I'm so grateful for that whole experience to transpire, because I now can take the pain that I have and bring it to power, and I can look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm not perfect. And I wasn't smart for entering into that relationship and negating how I felt intuitively about her and about really what I deserved. But that was where I was at in life. I thought that looks and having a business mattered, but there was no depth of character and spirituality in her, that now I would say I would never talk to somebody that it wouldn't even be on my level, not making her bad, but that's where I was. And I needed to go through that really traumatizing experience, that woke me up, because it woke me up to a level to see myself, okay, I will never enter into a relationship with somebody that doesn't possess the deep characteristics that I now showcase and bring to a relationship. But more importantly, I know that how my actions can create consequences, both positive and negative consequences. And I know that one simple wrong move of me grabbing that phone can completely change the trajectory of my life. But I look at it, I truly look at it with just such, grace and gratitude, because I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for that experience, and I know truly that I'm a good human, but, I'm a human that's evolving. I'm not a human that's perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know that you could press someone for breach of peace. I feel like I'm going to start calling the cops on people and be like, it is not peaceful here. I'm going to need to press charges. My peace is being interrupted.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Okay, so I know that you primarily work with coaching men, and I can tell you that a large part of this audience listening right now is probably female. So what do you think are some challenges that are more specifically unique to men? And then what are ways that us as women can support men in those challenges?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest thing with men that I've noticed from working as a coach for the last 2 years is we get caught up in the cycle of, this is the way it has to be. You have to hustle to be successful. You have to kill yourself to build the income that you want. You have to negate your personal self-care and your passions and your hobbies, and wipe all of that stuff off the table, even though it doesn't feel good, to focus primarily on your professional success. And I think, what I've seen in the world is, you can continue to go, year after year, and focus on money and focus on income and focus on acquisition of material possessions and so forth. But it is going to hit you like a freight train when you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, if you don't shift that now and start to infuse in your life what it means to live happily, to have a fulfilling life, to have passions and hobbies, and so, I think the biggest thing is realizing that if it doesn't feel aligned, or if it doesn't feel good, you have the opportunity to change it. Truly, like, you can shift your life. And a great practice I take, most of my clients through is, what does your ideal life look like? And then more importantly, what does your ideal day look like? And if you're not living your ideal day, and this is comprehensive of your profession, of a morning routine, of moving your body, of breathing, of meditating, if this isn't comprehensive of everything, even what you love to do, whether it's having a glass of wine or going for a walk, that day will continue to recycle itself. And then next thing you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years are going to pass, and you're going to wonder what happened with your life. So I say, start living your ideal day right now. This goes for men and women. Like, create your ideal day right now and just trust that by doing that, you're going to create the life that you want.
Oh, I love that. And I heard at a seminar I went to recently about making a list of 10 things that you want as a part of every day. And the woman who was sharing it was like, I put laughter on that list. I always want to laugh really hard, at least once a day. And then she's like, I always want to be outside on a walk. I always want. And so you make a list of these 10 things that every day that needs to be a part of your day. And I did it right then. I was like, oh, that's so good. And I remember because I was in Colorado, I wrote down like seeing the ocean, and I was like, oh no, how am I going to do this? So I go up to her after, and I'm like, I need to see the ocean every day. And she was like, well, maybe you could play it just like on a TV or something even. And I was like, well, not the same, but I see where you're coming from. But it's cool because then you're like, okay, I want to be doing these things every day. I want to read. I want to cook. I want to get 8 hours of sleep. I want to see the ocean, whatever these like 10 things are. And then ask yourself, how often am I doing each of those things? Like, do I actually create the space for laughter? It sounds weird, but like a lot of times I work a lot, and Frankie and I might just relax at night. Like, when are we laughing? And I realized like dancing in the kitchen is when we do a lot of our laughter. So dancing in the kitchen has to be one of the 10 because that leads to the laughter, And so it's so funny to think about. These things are so simple and so basic. I'm sure someone listening is like, this is literally so basic, but it's so important, and it truly will change your life if you actually implement these small, simple little things. And the one other thing I'll say is, a lot of my clients, I have them do the ideal day as well. And I have a worksheet for it. So if anyone listening is like, send me the ideal day worksheet, I can send you mine. I'm sure Matt has one as well. He could send you. Reach out to either of us. We'd love to send you this. And it's asking like, where do you want to wake up? Do you want to wake up, in the mountains? Do you want to wake up by the water? Do you want to wake up on a ship? Like, where do you want to wake up every day? And then who's next to you? And then what do you do first? And all these types of questions. Well, one thing that I feel like every client of mine would say is that they wanted to start each day sipping their coffee slowly on a porch or a patio or on their couch, potentially reading a book or something like that. But every client always, without fail, has always said that to me. And I'd always say, okay, do you do that? And they're like, no, I don't do that. I just wake up and rush out of the house and get to work. I'm like, okay, well, you said you wanted to be by the ocean, or you said you wanted to be in the mountains. Maybe that can't happen immediately, right? You live in the middle of suburbia, so you can't necessarily make that happen this very, very moment. But what can you make happen? You can wake up a little earlier so that you could sip that coffee slowly on your patio or slowly on your couch, and you could read that book for even 5 or 10 minutes, and you'd feel that peace and that serenity that you crave on this ideal day that you don't ever make happen in your current life. And so sometimes there's little shifts like that that can make a really big difference.
Yeah. And I love what you put about, experiencing joy. I think that's another thing for men, but for everybody is, the lack of joy in life. And, for me, like, I take every client through a morning routine, like creating a morning routine, because the way in which you live your morning is the way in which you're going to experience your day and your life. And I started putting ecstatic dance in my morning routine, where every morning on my yoga mat, before I move and breathe and meditate and do the cold shower, is ecstatic dance. I put on a playlist, and I just dance, and it's just moving my body feels so good. And, I think this is something that every single person can take something from, is bring more joy into your life on a daily basis. That in and of itself will elevate your vibration. It'll elevate how happy you are with your life. And it's going to send signals out to God, the universe, that you want more and that you're showing up for yourself in this way, which is going to attract more in of what you want, So yeah, so bring joy. Joy is so important. It's so easy for us to get so serious with life and our relationships and our careers and our businesses, but that's okay. But like, infuse some joy into your life, because you want to look back and say, I smiled and laughed a lot. It wasn't just when I was with my friends or with my partner. I did it myself. I created joy again from the inside out.
So cool. Yeah. Okay. And so how can women support men in their challenge of wanting to work hard and hustle and make the money and get the promotions, etc.?
Yeah. I think supporting a partner, either women through men or men through women, is the best thing you can possibly do, is show up for yourself. Truly. Like, create a life independently of the other person that really, really enlivens you. I feel like in relationship, it's easy for us to say, oh, this person does this, or they don't give me love, or they don't give me enough, respect, or they don't give me enough adoration, or whatever it is. But in actuality, they're going to show up for you how you show up for yourself. So if you're showing up with yourself and taking care of yourself and getting massages or taking a walk on the beach or treating your morning, as a time of ritual where you're breathing and meditating and journaling and having that cup of coffee and being mindful about each sip, the person that you're with will match you. They will truly match you. You will at least create a curiosity within them and say, and then, they'll notice this and they'll want to change. They'll want to shift if that partnership is cohesive and in alignment, right? So I think the best thing that anybody can do is show up for yourself, identify what it looks like to be your best self, and start to live that way. Start to live that way one day at a time, one morning at a time.
So good. Yes. Okay. So back to grit, just a few last questions. How does one acquire grit? Is that something that someone is like born with, or can it be acquired throughout life?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Grit is something that every single one of us possesses. Every single one of us on this planet has experienced challenge. Grit is what gets us to the other side of that challenge. And I think with grit, or with experiencing a way to, I guess, acquire or deepen your understanding or your ability to, showcase grit in your life, is understanding that a challenge is something that you don't run away from. Fear is something you don't run away from. Those things you want to lean into. You want to go forward. When the mountain is in front of you, understand that there's a lot of steps before you get to that peak. Grit is understanding that you are taking one step in front of the other, and trusting that through that commitment to self, through that commitment to leaning into fear and into challenge, you're going to build that grit muscle inside. It's like building your biceps at the gym with bicep curls, right? Grit is a muscle. It's something that we experience when we lean all the way in. And this is something that I say to every single client I have, and the people that I spend time with, is like, when you're afraid of something, or that there's a big far out goal you want to get to, lean all the way in. Like, truly lean all the way in. And in that process, you will build grit that's going to take you and cascade you to where you want to go and beyond.
Yeah. And what does it mean to lean all the way in, like on a practical level?
Yeah, on a practical level, it means take the steps forward. Understand that taking one step in the direction of where you want to go. A lot of, so many people get caught up in I want to, have this big goal of buying a big cabin on the beach or in the mountains, or I want to, make $1 million in my business, or I want to call forth this dream relationship. But in focusing too far out into the future, we basically pedestalize and amplify that goal, and it makes us feel like we can't get there because it's so far away. So, like, creating what I like to call micro goals. How can you take 1 or 2 steps forward in that direction? You know, if it's if it's you wanting to launch a podcast, just ordering the microphone, you know what I mean? Just ordering one thing, and knowing that in that commitment to self, in that, commitment to the direction you want to go in, you're creating momentum, and you're starting to, again, send the information out to the world that this is what you're doing, and things will start to shift and show up for you because you're honoring what you actually want. So create micro goals and focus on who you're becoming in the process, instead of making the goal the one and only thing that you look at, because that can create stress and anxiety around, well, I'm so far away, I'm never going to get there. So you paralyze yourself by doing that, and it gives us the opportunity to procrastinate towards what we want to go for. But if we focus on just taking the steps, taking a few small steps in that direction every single day, we'll get to where we want to go.
Micro goals. I love it. That's a great way to put it. And it's funny you said the podcast thing, because I have a guy friend who reached out to me because he wanted to start a podcast, and him and I got together actually at the same coffee shop that you and Frankie and I got together at like 2 weeks ago, right before we left Denver. And he had gone to like all these podcast classes to learn how to launch a podcast, and he had read all these articles and all this stuff, and it had been like numerous months. And I was like, well, why haven't you started yet? And he was like, it feels so daunting, it's so big. And that's kind of what him and I worked on together, is what are the smaller goals? And that's so funny you said the microphone thing, because I literally said to him, like, you need to order your microphone this week. And I was like, you put 2 podcast dates on the calendar so that you have 2 interviews scheduled, and get your crap together before those. Like, you got your microphone coming, you got a MacBook or whatever, you got everything you need. Like, you're good. You took all the classes and you did all this, I think we sometimes, especially, I teach this in the confidence workshop for women, but men and women both do this. It's like, we fill our brain with a bunch of knowledge so that we feel equipped. But we keep using knowledge, like lack of knowledge, as the reason why we can't do it. So we're like, I need to learn more, and then I need to learn more, and now I need to learn more. And it's really just fear. And we're hiding behind our fear with more knowledge and more education and certifications and education, getting your master's and doctorates and all these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Education's great. I love education. But when you keep not taking action on the actual dream, but you just keep taking action on building knowledge, eventually you got to actually take the leap into action.
Absolutely. And I think, and I've been guilty of this myself, in the personal development industry as a whole, it's so easy for us. I'm just going to order that one more book. I'm going to just listen to one more podcast. I'm just going to go to one more seminar. But the biggest thing you can do is take massive, messy action. Literally take massive, messy action, because we can again, like, keep extending, going forward, because we want to absorb, but in actuality, all that does is prevent us from actually taking the action. So taking action is the number one thing you can do. And in that, then listen to the podcast, then go to that seminar to amplify the way you want to show up, then, hire that coach that is going to help you, remove your blind spots and really hold you accountable to what you actually say you want to achieve. Right. But, understanding that it's all about execution. It's all about execution. So.
Yeah. Absorb, action. Absorb, action. Cool. Okay. So if every listener today walked away with one simple, smart action step to take from here, what would you urge him or her to do?
Mm-hmm. I would start to, first and foremost, say, if I showed up for myself and wanted to create my best life, what's possible? And then really just write down 2 to 3 things that you can start today to move in the direction of that. Because there are infinite possibilities, truly. Like, we've all been told as a kid, like, you can accomplish anything you want in life, right? And it's so true. It's so true. Look at Tony Robbins and Oprah Winfrey and Tom Bilyeu and all of these people, Richard Branson, all of these people, as Tom Bilyeu said, is we are all hopelessly average when we start. But when you move forward and you understand what's possible and you believe in yourself so fully, which again only happens by execution, then we can seriously create the life of our dreams. But you have to understand what's possible, and you have to understand that with possibility must be met by execution, must be met by action. And in doing that, you will create a life that you love, truly.
Mm. And only then will you awaken momentum. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, Matt, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. I had a blast interviewing you, and your wisdom and your passion and your motivation. I'm feeling amped for life. So thank you for giving that to me. Thank you for everyone who listened today. We really appreciate your time and being here. And we know that there are thousands of podcasts you can listen to. So we so appreciate you giving your time to this podcast today. So if you want to go check Matt out on Instagram, it is Matthew Shakir, Shakir, linked below. And you can visit his website at awakenmomentum.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, please, 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 please give 5 stars and write me a nice little review if you feel like it. That'd be awesome. Matt, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Janelle. This was awesome.
Yeah, bye.